Yeah, so this is a slight modification of the one I gave at Plumbers 2 weeks ago, let's call it. Um, and I've tried to tweak it for this audience, but it's a lot of the same stuff. So if you already saw it, feel free to go to sleep. Okay, so how big of a problem are un-upstream patches? Come on, there we go. So the first thing we need to do is kind of set some terminology. So we have the project that we're talking about, source code, that is then configured and built into a package. And then distro or distribution is a collection of packages. One second, I need to minimize that. So I think everyone probably understands that. So what are patches? So patches are a modification of that original piece's source code, at least within the context of this talk. So why do we need patches? So CVEs are all the rage right now. People hate them. But there are other things besides CVEs that are bugs that also need to be fixed. Sometimes people want to add new features to a package. And for something relevant to Yocto, we actually probably want to integrate the source code into the build environment. Yeah. So what do we actually do with the patch? Well, we upstream it, right? We find the issue, we fix the issue, we submit it upstream. It's iterated upon until it is accepted, and then that is put in the release. The release is made, and then we find more issues, and it's kind of this, let's call it a virtuous cycle instead of a vicious cycle. So if it's upstreamed, why don't we just use upstream, right? This is kind of the fundamental question. And the easiest answer is there's usually a time delta between when the upstream release of the package is made, or the package, and the distro, or in Yocto's case, Yocto's release. But there are other reasons why. For example, upstream won't take it. In many cases, it's unique to our individual build environment, or the fix is kind of quote unquote half baked, meaning that it's not fully fixing the underlying issue, or the maintainer would like a more larger encompassing change that is more that's more wide in the package, that and the upstream can be dead, or there's no maintainer of it, or the maintainer is unresponsive for one of many reasons. Come on. Next. Come on. And then, of course, every talk needs to have at least one XKCD slide. And this is kind of what I'm referring to in the maintainer being unresponsive, is there is lots of projects, especially when you get down to the nitty gritty, that's just some random person somewhere that's been maintaining it. And I'm sure many people in this project, without naming names, feel like that random person who's been thanklessly maintaining a project since 2003, or 2006. Is that when Yocto started? So we have to keep these patches in our distro tree. Sure, but when the upstream versions eventually take it, we can kind of get back to running purely upstream, right? Well, no. So what we have are what are normally called drive-by patches. I like to think of them as a drive-through, kind of like fast food restaurants, where it's quick and easy, but long term, it's really, really bad for you, and you probably shouldn't do it very often. And these are the patches that are created for the distro, but they're not submitted for inclusion upstream. And these are the problems I'm most concerned about with this talk, because we have this kind of chicken and egg problem of whose problem is it to upstream these patches? Is it the person that originally gave the Yocto layer maintainers the patch, or is it the Yocto like maintainers, or is it the person that submitted it to the maintainer, or is it now the maintainer's problem, or is it some kind of in between? And to wit, will the upstream project that's being patched ever even know there's a problem if it's never actually submitted upstream? And this shows yet another problem in that by having this, we're actually having a duplication of effort, because we have potentially multiple people fixing the same problem in, for example, Buildroot and Yocto and Fedora and Debian. And if all of us keep our patches separate, we, one, might have an inferior solution, and two, n number of people have done the exact same work. And I think every single person can tell in this industry can tell you we don't have enough people to duplicate work. And secondarily is bit rot of patches. And if you're unfamiliar with bit rot, it is over time patches slowly degrading because the things around them are changing to the point where what they're changing actually is no longer relevant. I'm sure there's a more elegant way of saying that, but that's roughly what it is. So this sounds like a theoretical problem, but this isn't actually a problem, is it? Yeah, it actually is a problem. And if it is a problem, that means we have these patches living in our trees potentially forever. And that doesn't sound like it's true, does it? Of course not. So in Yocto, we have in Nanbeld just short of 1,200 total patches broken down. And I am not a great script writer, so these numbers might be inaccurate, or it might not even sum to the total number. I haven't actually verified that it sums. It doesn't look like it actually does. But these, so take all this with a grain of salt, but these numbers are pretty close to being accurate. So we have just short of 1,200 total patches, 200 backports, 253 are pending, and that's the devil. 452 are inappropriate, 232 are submitted, 19 are denied, and 21 have an inactive upstream, and 69 are CVEs, or at least uniquely marked as CVEs. And I'm going to get into what each of those mean. So what is upstream status? So it's something that's been in the recipe style guide for quite a while. I'm sure that Richard can probably actually tell you the origin of it and how long it's been in there, but it's been in there a long time. And there are these unique fields that kind of tell you by looking at the patch quickly what it's doing, whether it's been submitted, for example, and in these fields you would like to see where it was submitted, usually a lower link or something similar. Whether it's a backport from an upstream version, these are the kind of the gold standard, because this is what a good patch submitter should do. Obviously, it can be denied, and we've included it in our release for whatever reason. Inactive upstream, inappropriate, and then a reason, which is often due to the fact that it's a build system fix. And then pending, which, as I said before, is the devil. And here is a breakdown of the numbers of each, similar to what you saw before, but graphs are always better. And then none, you see that very, very small number is a few patches that do not have a status in it. And here's the fun part. So this is the number of patches of the, I believe it was, I think this is pending. No, that number doesn't add up. But so this must be the total number. But by age, and of significance this is in 6-month cycles, because Yocto does release on 6-month cycles. So I think it's fair game for anything under 6 months to have happened in the cycle, and it not necessarily be upstream. But as you get this long tail, you have problems of things. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, probably not. But you can see that we do have a problem of things being years and years and years old and not upstreamed. And what are those things? So here are kind of a rough breakdown of things 7 years and older. I lazily grouped them under the package. It's a little sloppy, but it kind of gives you an idea. And as I'll show you in a second, year 13 is really an indication of when Yocto switched to Git, because that's how I'm querying the age, and not necessarily on the actual age of the patch. So let's actually look at it. And sorry, Richard, not trying to call you out, but yeah, this old patch Richard did. And I would like to point out that it is done in a way that looks like it probably was generated by Git and can be applied via Git AM or DevTool easily into an existing tree. So that is very good. But also the bad here is it doesn't tell you anything about the patch aside from the subject and that it's pending. We don't know if it's submitted or whatever. And the second oldest patch came from some company called OpenHand. Maybe someone on the call remembers OpenHand. And it claims to be from 2006, which is a long time ago. And it is still in this pending state. And just so I don't have to beat up on Richard alone, there's someone named Ross Burton that has one similar, but this one you can't even apply via Git AM or anything like that. It's an ugly patch, and Ross should be shamed. And it feels like I'm beating up on people. I'm not beating up on people, because there are reasons why people are submitting these things as pending, and it's usually because people are trying to get a release out and doing a quick and dirty hack. But some people are more to blame than others. And Kim, sorry, you're the worst offender. But here's something that I think is interesting and actually is a way that Yocto is actually ahead of the curve. And so what I've done here is I've mapped over time from the earliest tagged release that we had numerically in Git to the newest, and showing the patch load. And I think you'll find from left to right that the patch load has decreased, but also the number of pending patches we have has significantly decreased over time as well. And I would attribute this to actually it being monitored. And by monitoring it, we actually are doing the right thing and encouraging people to submit things upstream by just having this process in place. So let's compare it to Buildroot. So Buildroot has, as of their last release, has 1,600 patches, a little bit more than 35 with upstream status set, which I can almost guarantee you all of those were taken from Yocto and applied, and 2 uniquely with CVE tags in them. No one's here from Buildroot to kind of defend it, and I am in no way trying to crap on it, but I think that they could at least benefit from having the CVE patches marked. So just taking a quick look, because they don't have anything similar to upstream status in theirs, at least they're not using it regularly, we have really no idea what these patches are, whether they're fixes or build issues or build system corrections. And without that, they don't really have a way to improve. Let me come back to this one. So similarly, I graphed them as far back as they had a number to tag to now. And, I would call this a marked increase in patches over the time. And it looks like it's trending down, but at the same time, you could call it flat. You could call it overall still up high. So I think that they could benefit greatly from doing upstream status and monitoring it well. And then coming back here, I did a quick mapping of the number of files and how often they've been modified because they don't have upstream status. This was my attempt to try to figure out what kind of problem they have of patches being maintained over time. And 2 of them have been modified 14, 3, 13. So there you can see from the long tail here that there is a heavy maintenance burden from maintaining these patches between each release. So Fedora. So unfortunately, Fedora is a different beast completely. They have a vastly larger number of packages, and because of that, they have a vastly larger number of patches. And also, I think I probably did this in a suboptimal way. So what I did was I took from Fedora 36 every single source RPM and ripped it apart, and then looked at all the patches in there. So because of that, I couldn't get very accurate numbers as far as history and all that stuff. They do have more CVEs marked than build root, but at the same time, it's not really. It's a larger number of packages, so I'm not sure what we can get from that. And then they also have 2 upstream patches, upstream status patches, which could be directly pulled from Yocto. So what can we do commonly between all the distros, build root, built-in WRT, Fedora, Debian, is we could adopt some practices like using git format patch so that we can actually look at these a little bit better and track them better, because as you saw from Ross's patch, it's really hard to get anything valuable from the patch aside from the actual change if you just kind of do a git diff and redirect it into a file. And adding upstream status, or Debian apparently has something similar. I haven't been able to research that, but I was told that it's true. But having something similar, and maybe even adopting something common amongst all the distro and distro approximate things like Yocto, that we could actually see them, track them, and hold people accountable. And then, in a perfect world, maybe we could even only allow patches that have been submitted and accepted upstream. That's probably unrealistic, but, perfect world, I think we'd all like to live in that perfect world.